All right. Hey there. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. You guys hear me okay? Just give me a thumbs up. All right, cool. Great. So we're a few minutes before the top of the hour here. So if anybody wants to just start putting in the chat there, where you're from, let's figure out where everybody is as people are joining. All right. Lisa from Dallas, Kristen, San Diego. Good to have you here. All right. Vicky from Maryland. Probably everybody's pretty hot these days. Look at this from Norway, all the way from Norway. Welcome. It's interesting. Interesting personal story. My daughter, who's 18, just graduated from high school, is actually dating um, a guy whose family is from Norway. And so he's going to go to Norway for sort of a year after high school and do some studying. So got the Norway connection there. All right. Let's see. Still waiting for people here. If you're just joining, we're putting where we're from in the chat. We'll just give it just a few minutes to give people a chance to join here. I'm in Denver. I didn't put that. I guess I should tell you guys I'm in Denver, Colorado. So, um, all right. France. We're getting truly international, and it's probably getting later in the day for all of you folks in Europe there. See, a couple other people have joined. All right. Raleigh, North Carolina. Cool. Looking good. All right. So people are still joining the chat. If you have joined and you haven't told us where you're from yet, go ahead and put that in the chat there so we kind of know where everybody's coming from. We've already turned this into an international event. We got some people in Europe, so that's very cool to have you guys all joining us here and joining us from all over. As people are jumping in, I am Greg Roche. I'm the introverted networker. Um, I'm the person who's going to do the Q&A. I write on LinkedIn every day about professional networking. Also have a newsletter called the Introverted Networker. Many of you probably already subscribe to that. So I'm just doing this today. I want to set this up as a bit of a open Q&A. I'm going to ask that you put your questions in the chat. So whatever questions you have, go ahead and ask them in the chat. I'm going to take them from the chat and then answer them. So I'm not going to pull people off mute. So everybody's on mute so that we don't hear anybody's background noise. So go ahead. You can start putting your questions in the chat. I'm going to do my best to get to as many of them as possible. If for whatever reason I don't get to your question, this is being recorded. So again, hopefully everybody's okay with that. And I will go through as many as I can, try to answer those questions. If I don't get to them and it's something that you put in there, I'll try to follow up with you and answer your question if we don't get to it in this session. But really, want to do this as just sort of an open way that I can answer your questions, maybe give you a little bit of my point of view and my feedback on things, and kind of tell you, hopefully give you something you can take away and that will help you with your networking. So again, there's a good chance you're connected with me on LinkedIn or you're already subscribed to the newsletter. If you're not, those would be great ways to get additional information or to connect with me. So let's go ahead and jump in. I already see there's one, and I don't know if it's Dido or Dido. I'm sorry. I'm going to apologize in advance if I mispronounce your name. As somebody whose last name is Roche, it gets mispronounced all the time. So I totally understand that about getting your name mispronounced. So I apologize in advance. I'll do my best to pronounce your name correctly. But so I'm going to jump right in here and I'm going to answer this first one, which is, as someone who is early in their career, I have trouble providing value to my connections that have 20 years of experience. What is the best way to do this? So this question comes up a lot from college students or recent college graduates because they come out thinking, nobody wants to hear what I have to say. Nobody wants to hear my ideas. And a lot of times I am, what I will say to college students when I talk to them in person or sort of online is, you're underestimating your experience and your knowledge. And the reason why I say that is, somebody who's maybe got 20 plus years of experience hasn't been in school for 20 years, which means whatever they learned 20 years ago is kind of where they ended. And of course, they've learned about things in their career. But you have a different perspective from a different generation. You have a different view of the world, and you have different ideas. And so I would say that somebody who is 20 plus years older than you is still interested in your ideas. So you have your perspective, your ideas. You can share what you were just studying in school, what they're teaching in school these days. You can say, here's the point of view, here's the perspectives, and that's of value to people. And the other thing you have is a sort of curiosity and desire to learn. And so what happens a lot of times is, people who are farther in their career, and I'm one of those. I've been sort of, I would say, in the corporate working world for 27 years. I 20 almost 28 years. I would say I am always happy to talk to people who are new in their career and answer their questions. So even if you're giving them the opportunity to impart their wisdom on you. So don't feel like you don't have anything to give. You definitely have your perspective. You can tell people how your generation views things and how you approach things, and you can give them your attention and curiosity in a way that makes them want to talk to you. So I think a lot of this has to do with really thinking about your value and not undervaluing yourself, and kind of putting it out there and saying, like, hey, here's what I can offer you. And sometimes, again, you're just offering your attention. I think we all forget that the thing that most people want is attention. And I don't say that in a bad way. I say people want you to pay attention to them, and we all have our attention we can give to people. And that's something, if we're really curious and we ask them questions and we dig into what they know, that in and of itself is a gift. So again, I would say don't undervalue that, and kind of embrace your different perspective. Okay, so H Gaska from Norway, right? Got any good tips for someone looking for a new job? I'm currently unemployed. Okay, great. I would say there's a lot of tips for somebody who's currently unemployed. What I tend to tell people, and I'll tell you really quickly, whenever people are starting out with networking, because we're going to focus this on networking. There's a lot of other people that follow me, and I follow on my LinkedIn every day. They'll post comments on my posts, and I comment on their posts, and they know a lot about LinkedIn profiles, resumes, cover letters, interviewing. So if you're looking for some of those people, look at some of the people who comment on my posts, and you might find somebody who can help you with those aspects. I'm going to focus on networking. What I always tell people when they're looking for a job and they're unemployed is, have you already reached out to your existing network? And most people who are just starting out say, I don't have a network. That's why I'm talking to you. I need to figure out who my network is or how to network. I always tell people to start with who you already know. So that's my number one step in networking, is start with who you already know. And everybody will say, well, again, I need to meet new people because they're going to help me find a job. 100%. I'm just saying that's where you're going to start. That's not where you're going to end. So you're going to start with who you know. And those could be people who you've worked with at jobs in the past. That can be friends of yours who, you think, well, they're just friends. Well, they're still part of your network. Those can be people who are in organizations or social groups that you're a part of. All those people are your network. You already have them. You may not think of them because they don't work in the same profession or industry as you, but all those people know people too. And so when you start with who you know, and I usually say you want to start, I will say a couple of things. Like one tip is, who are the first 5 people that come to mind when you think of networking? Usually I say this, if you've been laid off or you've lost your job, who are the first 5 people you would tell about it? Immediate family excluded. And reach out to them and say, hey, it's been a while since we talked, because it probably has been. And I'd love to get together and like, let's reconnect. So you're reconnecting with the people you already know, because they trust you. They know you. They're not going to say no. You're probably going to be able to have a conversation with them. And then think about all the people you've worked with. I will tell people to literally take their resume or their LinkedIn profile and go through the experience section and start walking through um, those places you worked, and start thinking of all the people you worked with. Who did you work with that you've kind of lost touch with? Reach out to those people and say, hey, it's been a while since we connected. Would love to catch up. And, look, if you're looking for a job, you don't have to be, sly about it. You don't have to be shy. You don't have to veil your intentions. You can say, like, look, I'm really looking for my next opportunity. We'd love to get your point of view on it, right? Get your advice. You're basically saying, I'm, again, going back to the first question, I'm giving you my attention. So tell me what you know. I'd love to hear your point of view on it. And start there. And then as you have those conversations with people and you start talking to them, they're probably going to say something like, what are you looking for? And so my other tip is, make sure you get very clear on what kind of jobs you're looking for. What companies have those jobs? What are the names of the jobs? Who are other people who do those jobs? To the point where I would really encourage you to write a list of the companies you want to work at, or the types of jobs you want, or the kind of people you want to meet, and really tell the people who are already your connections or you're reconnecting with, this is what I'm looking for. Because people want to help you, but if you're not specific enough, if you say, I'm just looking for a job, how can they possibly know like what is going to fit for you? But if you get really specific, they can start being on the lookout or thinking about it. And when they hear something, they'll go, oh, this person's looking for this job. I can connect them with it. So you have to get really specific when you're looking for a job on what it is you want to do. And again, I always say, get it to a target company list. It can be, I would say, at least 10, maybe a dozen, maybe 20. It's up to you. You can have however many people you want, or however many companies you want. But I would always start with a target company list and have that as something you give to these people you already know to get started networking. So those are a couple tips for that one. So any other questions? I don't see any other in the chat. I did get a question. So anybody who's joined in, please put your networking questions in the chat. I'm gonna take them from there. And I'm going to go to another one I got in advance, and then I'll hop into the next one that popped in there from Lisa. So I got one in advance from an individual who said, how do I overcome shyness in networking? And so I asked a little bit more detail, because I said, what does that mean? What does shyness mean when you say I'm shy? And what the individual said when they responded is, I just don't like talking to new people. So we didn't get into that, but I tend to think of myself as a shy person in some circumstances. And what I mean by that is, if I walk into a room full of people I don't know, and I have to try to meet people, I'm very bad at initiating the conversation, because I'm kind of shy, I would say. I don't like to initiate the conversation with strangers. I have that feeling. I don't like to talk to strange people. If I can keep my eyes down and not look at people and just go about my day, then I do, right? But people that I know, I'm perfectly happy talking to. So yeah, I totally feel this. I'm shy around new people. I don't like to initiate the conversation. So I get that. And at the same time, that's why I personally, when I network, I talk to people I already know. And that's why I say that's my first step when I tell people how to network, because for me, people I already know are not threatening. They're not hard to talk to. And I am generally comfortable doing it. What I then do is, as I have those conversations, those people tend to introduce me to new people. So they will say, who can I introduce you to? And it might be via email or LinkedIn message, and they'll introduce me to somebody new. Now that person's not really a stranger. I don't know them, but I've been connected to them, and I can just talk to this new person who's been introduced to me by somebody I already know, right? So there's a transfer of trust that's happening there. The person I already know and trust, is saying you should meet this person. So I trust that they are not going to put me together with somebody that is not going to be right for me to talk to. And then I can talk to that person and say, hey, so and so introduced us. Tell me more about you. So it helps me break the ice a little so that I don't have to worry so much about being coming up with sort of the icebreaker or the opening line or anything like that. So that's how I overcome my own shyness. I don't know if that resonates with anybody else, but that's kind of the way I think about this. So okay, so Lisa from Dallas, I believe, is where you're from. Says, I'm working with a group of college students that are going to graduate next year, and I don't know how to build a helpful network when they have no experience. They really don't like reaching out to people they don't know. Okay, so again, college students often underestimate their networks. And so what I typically tell college students is, you know, a lot of professors that you've talked to in your 4 years that you've been there, or 5 years, or however long you've been there. You know, your friends who might be interviewing and getting jobs in other places. You probably know some upperclassmen who have already gotten jobs and gone to work in other places. And so some of those people are a good place to start to say, hey, tell me a little bit about what you did and how you connected and what did you do? So there are people that a lot of times college students just think those aren't my network. I have to cold call and outreach people cold. Um, and that's not the case, right? There are other people that you can talk to. There are other people that can say, oh, let me introduce you to somebody new. You get introduced to somebody new, like I just said, and then you have this conversation and you talk to them, and hopefully they give you some good advice, and then you get introduced to somebody new that way. So I think, like I said, college students tend to believe that they're going to have to do like cold calling or cold outreach, and they don't really like doing that. But they really need to think about who are the people I already know and who can I talk to and who can I start to have these conversations with, so that they'll introduce me to somebody new who might be closer to the types of jobs that I want to have. All right, so let's move on. Libby, 2 questions. Can you advise on how to network with target organizations when you don't know anyone there and don't have any connections? And then how do you network when you're not sure what you should be targeting next? I did that a few years ago and it felt like a total waste of time, mine and theirs. Let me start with the first one and then let me think about the second one while I'm answering that question. Okay, so how do you network with target organizations? So the first thing is tell your existing network who those target organizations are, because you may not know anybody, but your existing network may know them. So that's why, again, I say the target company list is that list and you give it to people you know. I mean, I'm talking physically a printout piece of paper or a document you can email so that people can look at it and keep it, because they may not think of somebody right now, but they'll think of somebody later if they have it. It also reminds them a little bit like, hey, I'm supposed to be trying to help this person. I'm helping Libby out. I should look at this list and then maybe I know somebody. So let your existing network know your target companies. That will help you maybe meet somebody and get connected. The second thing is, online, something that you can do is if you're on LinkedIn, and I'm always going to talk about LinkedIn. It's the main place I hang out. You can use other social networks, but most people use it for professional purposes. Um, Start following those organizations, start trying to find people in those organizations who are active on LinkedIn and are posting. It's not easy. It takes work, right? There's not a fast way to do it other than to start following the organization and trying to find people in the organization who seem like they're posting or commenting, and start following them. And if they are posting, and I'm not talking about the company posts on their company page, because some social media manager is doing that. But sometimes people will post something about their organization and you can comment on that, and you follow them so that you see it in your feed. You comment, you say like, hey, this is a really great thing that your organization is doing, would love to learn more about it. You're not trying to like connect with them right then, you're just trying to show up in their social media world, so that when you do reach out to connect, you're not a complete stranger. They've seen your name in the comments and they're more likely to accept your connection, and maybe you can go from there. So that's one way to start to get to meet people at your target organizations without having to just cold outreach people. So that's kind of the follow and comment strategy that I talk about. It does take work, right? You're going to have to follow some people. You're going to have to see if they post it. If you, to figure out how they post, when you go to their profile, if you don't know this, go to their activity in LinkedIn. You scroll down on their profile, it shows their posts, their comments, things like that. Look at their posts, look at their comments. They may not post, but they may comment. And if they have a really good comment on somebody else's post, you can comment on their comment, right? I mean, you're just trying to kind of show up in the same space so that when they see your name on a connection request, it's not the first time they've seen it. So that's a way to do that. If you want to do it a little more cold as opposed to giving people your target list. How do you network where you're not sure where you know to be targeting next? Well, so that's the first question, right? Is how do you know where do you want to work? And some of those things that you can do to figure that out is, what companies are in the industry that you're interested in, or maybe you don't have an industry, or what are the companies in your area that you've sort of seen and maybe heard about, and maybe they're interesting because they do something good in the community, or you like that. Sometimes I say, look at the best places to work in your city, because most cities will publish a list of like 25 top companies to work at in our city. Look at those lists and say, like, is anything interesting there for me? Look online, like who's posting jobs you're interested in, because I'm not, and you can apply, right? That's fine, do that. But I'm also saying, like, look at those companies that are actually posting, because those are people who are hiring. See if they're ones you want to work at. Go to Glassdoor, go to any of the rating sort of things to see if that's where you want to go. So I think you have to do some research and start at least giving people some sense of where you want to work. It doesn't have to be a laminated target list, right? You don't have to just make it once and you can't change it. You can always like take stuff off. So I do think that it's a tough thing, but you're going to have to figure out what is it you want to do and what companies do that. And that's just probably a little more work on your part to really look inward and figure out what it is you want to do. Okay. Two questions here, and I believe Romani is in France with us here. So, for international professionals, what do you think are the most effective ways to build trust while you're trying to network, especially when you weren't educated or raised in the country? I mean, I think building trust happens a lot the same. I mean, it's probably different in different cultures. I think some cultures are more trusting than others. But I think trust usually comes from you being interested in the other person first. So I find that if I'm curious about people and interested in them, they tend to be more open to talking to me and willing to then hear what I have to say. So, I don't live in France, so I don't know what that culture is like there. So I apologize for not being in tune with that. But I think probably it's the same, that if you generally are curious about people and ask them about themselves and let them talk about themselves without trying to put your sort of beliefs or point of view into the conversation, they're probably going to turn around and ask you what you think, and then you can kind of go from there. But I always tell people, start by being interested, being curious, asking people about themselves, let them, kind of do the talking. And then a lot of times trust will follow from that. Let's see. From your experience, what makes someone truly memorable in a networking context in a good way, especially when they're still trying to establish themselves? Yeah, I think what makes somebody truly memorable to me is what I just said. If they seem like they're really interested in me. And I know some people are like, well, if everybody's interested in each other, like, how does anything get said? Like, how do you have any conversations if everybody's asking everybody else about themselves? Look, you're gonna have some back and forth in the conversation. The first person's gonna say, hey, let me um, uh, let me tell you about myself, right? Or I'm going to ask you about yourself, and then you're going to ask them about themselves. You're going to take turns in the conversation, right? So, but your whole goal is like, you want to really be, again, interested in other people and curious about it. And I mean, like, generally, not just like I'm asking the questions because this guy said I'm supposed to ask you a question about yourself, but really, like, who is the person? Where do they come from? What's their background? How did they get where they're at now? Like, what excites them? What are they looking forward to next month? What was great about last month? Like, so, like deeper things like than how are you, but better questions that really kind of let them um, kind of bring out who they are. And some of those things, like one question is, what do what's something about you most people don't know, but you wish they did? The last part is important because you're giving them permission to, like, you only want to hear about things that they're comfortable telling you about. Right. So if you say, what's something you wish people knew about you? They might be like, yeah, there's some stuff about me that I wish people knew, but I'm not going to tell anybody. So I think the last part of, but you wish they knew, is like, sometimes people are like, I'm an amazing singer, or I do stand up comedy, or I was this all star athlete. And most people don't know that. So you kind of say it in a way that gives them permission to tell you something they really want to tell you, but they normally feel odd about it. So you're kind of opening up that door to let them tell you something interesting, and you never know where that conversation is going to go. Okay, moving on. Carol N, how do you meet people of interest at a conference when you don't have a list of attendees ahead of time? And how do you get to more meaningful conversations? Yeah, so conferences and in-person networking, that can sometimes be a little daunting. And yes, if you can get the attendee list ahead of time, great. Sometimes you can't, and sometimes you can't connect with people before you go. Um, Here's what I do, and I don't know if this is right for anybody. I'm a shy person, but when I go to a conference or a networking event, I try to make myself stand out. I try to make myself stand out by what I wear, so that people will be like, hey, that's a great t-shirt, or hey, that's a great jacket, or something like that, to approach me and start to open up the conversation. That's one thing I do. Now, not everybody's comfortable doing that. So maybe it's something like you have an interesting name tag, right? And so sometimes you can modify your name tag to add things to it, to make it stand out, make it more colorful, make it something that people are like, ooh, that's interesting. Like, tell me about that. Sometimes I will say things like, I will put things on my name tag that will say, like, I'm interested in meeting, heads of HR at companies, or something like that. So that people are like, ooh, you did something to your name tag. Let me ask you about that. I've even taken like my LinkedIn QR code and like made it the same size as my name tag, and like put that in there, so that people are like, wait, you don't have a normal name tag. What's going on with that? So these are kind of things to get people to ask you, if you're not really comfortable engaging in the conversation. I think the other thing is, there's some other people who will say, don't let the lunch line opportunity pass. I mean, sometimes you're just standing in lunch and in line for lunch, and you can say, like, so how do you like the conference so far? Who's been your favorite speaker so far? Some people will sit down at tables, and you can sit at a table and just say, hey, can I sit here? So those are some other things at conferences that can help you start up conversations. As far as to get more meaningful conversations, that goes back to, I think, of, hey, what is it you're here and most interested in? What is it that you're looking to get out of this conference? Like, what was the number one thing you wanted to get out of this? What was your goal? I think more meaningful conversations come when we ask better questions. So think of like better questions you can ask to try to get people to open up and tell you a little bit more about themselves. And then that generally leads to better conversations. Okay, so Adonai Martinez, if I'm an early professional, how can I approach uh, how can I approach people who have more expertise in my target area, struggle to bring anything of value? So we talked a little bit about this earlier. And I think, the key there is, if you're trying to talk to people who are a little bit farther ahead of you, always just go with and I know I don't know if you believe me or not, or maybe this hasn't worked, but if you go with the, like, I'm brand new in my career and I would really like to talk to somebody who's farther along, what advice do you give me? Most people love to give their advice. A lot of people love to give their opinion. And if you give them the opportunity to say, I'm willing to listen, they're probably going to give you the advice, right? And so if you just come at this with like, hey, I'm new, I'm trying to learn, what advice would you give? Um, Most people will give it to you. Now, the other thing I would say is, where you stand out here is, if somebody gives you advice, whether it's in an email or a LinkedIn message, or you have a phone call, or you actually have in-person coffee or something like that, go do it, right? If they give you advice you can take action on, go take action on it. Or say like, what's one thing I could try to do today to help position me for this industry? And they're like, you should go research this, this, and this, or you should look up this book, or you should listen to this podcast, or you should contact this person. If they give you advice, go do it. Like take their advice and do it, and then come back to them and say, hey, you told me to do this. I went and this is what I did. Here were the results and the outcomes. I just wanted to share that with you. So that does a couple things. Number one, it signals to them that you're somebody who's going to listen to them and follow what the advice they gave you. And it also gives you a reason to follow up with them in the future, to come back to them and be like, hey, it's been a few weeks or months since we talked. I wanted to tell you what happened with this. And that gives you another reason to connect with them and possibly continue the conversation. And maybe they can be like, hey, look, this person really showed their drive and their ambition. They really showed, what they can do. And so, now I'm going to, help them out, or I'm going to introduce them to somebody else. So I think, those are, some of the things that you definitely can do as somebody who's kind of coming out of school. All right. So Mark, good to see you, man. It's been a long time. What is your advice for building a local network where you live? I think I think it can be the same as if you build a network outside of your local area. Here's what I do. I connect with people the same way, whether they live in the same city as I do or whether they live somewhere else in the world. And I tend to connect with people online first, which is what I would always tell people: connect online, because it's easier to find people. It's easier to start the connection. It's sort of lower risk. And then I will, and sometimes that's people I know. Sometimes that's just LinkedIn. Sometimes that's people I just reach out to and say, hey, I'm looking to connect with people like you. Um, and then I'll start with sort of an easy message, an email or a LinkedIn message like, hey, would love to talk more. Or I would say like, here's something that I'm working on. I would love to get your point of view on it. Would love to talk sometime. And, sometimes it leads to that. Sometimes it doesn't. But we'll typically get on a phone call, like a Zoom call or an actual phone call, and we'll talk on the phone. These may be people that live in the same city as me too, by the way. So you can do this and just focus on people who live in the same city you live in. And then you can, what I would say is decide how many of those conversations you want to have and if you want to meet in person. So that's how I approach it, whether it's somebody in Denver or somebody in some other city. I will get together with people in Denver, but here's the thing: when you go to get together for coffee, you got to drive, you got to pick a spot, you got to drive there, you got to park, you got to go have coffee, hang out, you got to get back in your car, you got to drive home. I mean, it could take 2 to 3 hours out of your day to do that. Now, in person is great. It's a great way to connect. It's a great way to get deeper relationships. So by all means, if you've got the time and you want to do that, go for it. But I think you can be as effective if you're having voice-to-voice conversations. And what I mean by that is a phone call or a video call, not just text-based conversations in emails or messages, because text-based conversations, you lose a lot of context. I mean, I think we've all been in a situation where somebody wrote something and we misinterpreted what they wrote. But when you talk to somebody and you hear their voice, very seldom does that happen. It's easier to understand what they're talking about, what they're challenged with, or what they're working on. So I would say, back to this, some other things you can do from a local perspective is, if you are okay going to events, if you are okay with getting together in person, then do that, right? I mean, I think it comes down to the same sort of principles of who are the people you want to be around. Who are the people you know? Because those probably are going to be local too. So tapping into people you already know is a good way to find other people that are around you locally. You can always go to networking events if that's your thing. It's not my thing. It's why I kind of do this a different way. But like I said, I do it the same, whether it's somebody who lives in the same city as me or if they live somewhere else. So hopefully that helps, Mark. All right. Here we go. Yanni. Addressing limiting beliefs. How do you help skeptical business owners open up to the idea of expanding their network? They usually refuse to get out of their safe zone, only interacting with clients or people they know. Um, well, I guess what I would say is, how did they come to meet the clients that they already have? How did they come to meet the people they already know? Most of us meet the people we know in one of three ways, right? And the first two are kind of related to networking. The last one is random. So we meet people from proximity. So what I would say to these business owners, who are the people you already know? And how did you meet them? You probably met them because you worked with them, you did business with them, maybe you went to school with them, maybe they live in your neighborhood, maybe they go to the same social or religious organizations as you. So that's great. And there's probably a lot of those people that they already know that could become new clients. They just haven't asked them or they haven't put it out there. Um, so the second thing is, and they might, if they're business owners, they might be, look, I advertise, like I just market, I advertise. That's what I do. Okay, fine, cool. But if they want to network, it's then those people in the first group, that group I just described, the proximity group, then introduce you to new people, right? So that's group number two, is introductions. So most of the people in your life, you either were just in the same geographic space as they were at the same time, and you got to know them, or those people introduce you to somebody new. So bucket number two is introductions. That's how you meet new people. You got introduced by somebody you already know. Again, if you think about most people you know, that's probably one or two ways you met them. The third is random strangers. Like, and I call this, like, I met this random person on the train or the bus. You just sat down there and you started talking, and oh my gosh, now you're friends. Well, okay. How many of those do you have in your life? Probably some, but most of the people don't fall into that category. So I would say we can really control groups one and two. Group three is just sort of like the universe putting us together with somebody else. So that's what I would say in terms of, I guess, I don't know if I'm asking the question, but if they're skeptical about networking, I think they're probably skeptical because they don't want to go to events, because they're like, that's not worth my time, because I go to these events and then I hand out a bunch of business cards and it doesn't give me any business. Okay, don't do that. Think of and they know this, like they've already got clients. I mean, isn't it, it's most, I think most business owners, or I thought most business owners would be like, the best sort of clients are the ones that get referred, because the new person comes in and they're already like, yeah, this person told me you're great. You don't have to sell me on anything. I mean, I think that's pretty common. So I'm not sure if I'm like, not, if I'm really getting to that or not. So you can tell me if I'm missing the point there, or if there's something else I should do there. So, all right. So, Vanda, I am more likely to accept connection requests when someone sends me a message, but I notice that some people will send a connection request without a message. What are the ways you approach these requests without context as to why they may have wanted to connect outside of sending messages like happy to connect? Yeah, general rule. I mean, I think if you listen to a lot of people, they'll say things like, um, always send a note, right? Because that gives people a little bit of background. I will say something about LinkedIn I've noticed. LinkedIn will recommend people you connect with. And if it has the connect button or the little plus sign by their name, and sometimes on the mobile app, this happens a lot, and you click it, it will just send them a connection request and it won't give you an opportunity to write a note. So I think there's potentially some people that are just going through their mobile app and hitting the plus sign and it's sending the request, and they don't have a chance to send a note. So keep that in mind if you're connecting. It's okay. It's no big deal if you do that and it sends a connection request and you can get send a note. It's not gonna be tragic, right? So, but I think generally you want to add that note as to why you're connecting. But I do say this for the group. I just wanted you guys to kind of know, sometimes they may not mean to do it. It may be unintentional, right? Secondly, how I handle it, I accept a lot of requests from a lot of people. I've just always been more of an open network, but I'm trying to be more conscious of it, because what happens is, if you're going to post on LinkedIn or you're going to sort of share content and things like that, if your network's not active, so if somebody were to connect with you and they never get on LinkedIn again, you're showing stuff to people who aren't going to comment or like it, and LinkedIn takes that as a signal that your content's not good. So you want to connect with people who are probably going to be active on LinkedIn, who are probably going to be there, and if you're not creating content, it's not that important, right? So this is, again, I'm doing this every day, so I try to you know to be conscious about it. Who I don't connect with a lot of time is people who it's obvious that as soon as I connect, I'm going to get pitched and they're going to sell me something. Now, if it's something that I'm interested in, that's in the world that I work in and stuff like that, I probably will say okay, because I might be interested in their product. If it's like website redesign, I don't need my website redesigned. Like if their profile says like I design websites, I'm like, I don't need a website. So I probably will ignore that one. Right. If somebody says like, I'm a virtual assistant and, I help people. That's great. I'm sure you do. Awesome. I don't need a virtual assistant right now. So if it's something that like I get a headline, I'm like, I probably am not going to need what this person's going to try to sell me. I generally don't accept it. Right now, most people are like, I'm looking for a job, or I'm a certain HR professional or something like that. I'm like, yeah, great. Sounds good. No problem. But that's how I kind of filter out the people who don't send me a message or just want to connect. Even if they do send me a message and they're like one of those people, I'll say things like, I'll just ignore, right? I mean, I've sent connection requests that have gotten ignored. Big deal. It doesn't take me down or hurt my self-esteem. So it just happens. So that's kind of how I filter that out. Yeah, I think Donna had added on, there's a limit to how many messages you can send in the free version. Yeah, and if you send a note, then sometimes it doesn't count against you. Okay, so just scrolling through this. I like that you guys are helping each other answer questions, which, by the way, I'd be interested to know, like, is this format helpful, and is it helpful to have other people sort of weigh in and answer the questions here? Because in the past, I've done group coaching sort of like this, and we'll all get on a video call like this. And I really like it because people have other ideas than I have. I don't have every good idea in the world, and I'm not the person who knows everything about networking. So if this is something that you kind of like, I'd love to hear if you'd like to do more of this, or if you'd like to do it a different way. So, all right. L, what advice would you give to someone who has left a toxic environment? You don't want to network with former coworkers. How do you start to network if you want to make career pivot in this situation? Well, I would say, I get that. And I understand sometimes people are like, I don't want to talk to anybody there. I would say, are there other people who left that organization for the same reason? And maybe not. But if there are, would those be people you'd be interested in? Because it's not just the people who are still at the organization, it's people who were there and went somewhere else. So is there a possibility that there's other people who feel the same way you felt and that maybe work somewhere else and you could connect with them? I don't know. I don't know what the situation is. And if you can't, I guess the other thing is like, what are other organizations that are similar to the one you were at? And I don't mean the toxic part. I mean like in the industry and the type of stuff and the place where you want to work. Or if you're making a career pivot, who are the organizations that are in the area you want to go into? And then you got to kind of go back to that sort of either follow and comment strategy or connection request strategy, to try to start to break the ice and break into those places. But again, also back to the target list and starting with people who are maybe not necessarily coworkers, but other people who might be part of your network from other places. So there's multiple sort of ways to kind of go about this. But you're going to have to, kind of, figure out who are the right people you want to connect with. Because I get it. Sometimes you're like, I don't want to talk to any more of those people. And so don't put them in your network or take them out of your network, right? You don't have to network with people you don't like. That's the good thing about networking, is you can be in control of who you meet, who you talk to, who you have conversations with. Cool. Let's see. We got a lot of conversation about sending messages. Sending a note with a connection request is helpful. Yep, that's what I do. Yeah, I'm loving this. I like this this interaction going on here. Let's see who made a similar pivot. So that's a question. So Mark has sort of a question for the group here about people making a pivot. Is there anybody who feels like they've made a career pivot um, um, in their sort of career and done something and that's worked.
Yeah. So, Greg,
Yeah.
if I can comment,
Yeah.
I just I just meant to say, find people who've made a similar pivot to what you're trying to do,
Mm-hmm.
because you already have something in common, and
Yeah.
network with those people.
Mm-hmm.
That's the best folks to ask for advice.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Great. Thanks for hopping on. Good to see you, Mark. It's been many years. For those Mark and I worked at the same place together a long time ago. So you still live in Indianapolis?
Nope, I'm in Denver.
Oh, okay. All right.
So, yeah,
Okay.
thanks.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Other questions. And so now that you've broken the ice, Mark, if somebody wants to ask a voice question, you could just unmute yourself. I mean, you've always been able to have the ability to unmute yourself. So if anybody has like a question um, and wants to talk, feel free.
Yikes.
Yikes. Yeah. See? No. It's good. Um,
Hi, Greg. It's nice to meet you.
yeah. Nice to meet you too.
My name is Dito. I
Ito. Yep.
have I have one question about what is the best way to follow up with your older contacts. So let's just say you haven't talked for about 2 or 3 months.
Mhm.
How can you follow up without making it seem redundant?
Okay, so this is somebody that you maybe connected with a few months ago, and now you're following up again. So it's not like it's. So I'm clarifying that because there's a couple different situations that happen. The first is, and this is not the one you're describing, but a lot of people say something like, "I haven't talked to a person in 2 to 3 years, or 15 or 20 years." And they'll say like, how do I approach that? And I would always say, hey, like flip the script around and think about this from the other person's point of view, or think of it from your point of view. If you were somebody who hadn't heard from somebody in 2 or 3 years, and you generally were on good terms with them, and they said, hey, I just thought of you the other day. I know we haven't talked in 2 or 3 years. Would love to reconnect and find out what's going on. You'd probably, I mean, I don't know how you feel about it, but most people are like, that'd be great. I would love to catch up with them. And I'm so happy they made the effort. So if you haven't talked to them in a long time, that's a good way to approach this, and really don't overthink it, because most people who get that note are going to be excited to want to reconnect with you. But in your situation, here's what I would try to do. It's okay if you haven't talked to them in 2 to 3 months. You can always follow up and be like, hey, the last time we talked about X, Y, and Z. Since that time, I heard about this new thing, or I thought about it more. I have a new idea. I have a different point of view on what we talked about. And so I just wanted to kind of share it with you. And here's what I'm thinking. So that might be a way to do that. Going back to the original conversations you want to try to have something you're going to have to follow up on to make it so that you trigger that, right? So if they say, here's a book, here's a podcast, here's an idea, here's somebody you should go check out, here's another person you should meet, like you want to walk away from the meeting the first time with one of those follow-up things, even to the point where you say like, okay, I'm going to follow up with you in a couple months once I've read this book, or once I've listened to this podcast, or once I've talked to this other person, or once I've learned more about this subject. I'm going to follow back up with you in a couple months. So, just be ready. I'll reach out to you whenever, the time is right. And that way you kind of like tee it up so that they're not like surprised, like, why are you reaching out to me again? So I think if you haven't done that, that's okay. You can kind of do what I was saying of, hey, we talked a few months ago. Here's how I've kind of thought about this, and I got a new idea. Um, or when you're having the original conversation, just kind of create the situation that's going to make it natural for you to follow up because you said you were going to do it. Now, if you say you're going to do it, you probably should do it, right? If you say you're going to do it and you never follow up, they're going to be like, oh, okay, I talked to this person and they never followed up with me. But try to make sure, if you say, hey, I'm really going to circle back on this, make sure that you do that. Does that help?
Yeah, that answers my question. I think other people did that with me, but I never took the time to. I guess it's something that escapes my mind in the moments, like just to close off the conversation
Yeah.
and say like this is where I
Yeah.
plan to reconnect with
Sure.
you.
Yeah, I mean, so this stuff kind of takes practice, right? And here's the thing about networking that I think where people struggle, because nobody teaches you how to network. Nobody ever taught me how to network, right? And so we go through life and people say, you need to network, you need to connect, you need to network more, but nobody says like, here's how you do it. And so I think a lot of people underestimate the fact that we all are really great at having structured conversations that get us where we want to go. And so that's why I think you've really, like you said, got to be conscious about, I go into a conversation with somebody, I'm going to be really curious about them. I'm going to ask them good questions. I'm going to kind of try to help them talk. I'm going to try to figure out what they're working on. I'm going to try to help them, give them something. And then I'm going to be really easy to help with my target list, or here's what I'm looking for. And then, like you said, keep the door open for the conversation. Like, that's a lot of things to try to keep track of in a conversation. But it's kind of necessary. So you got to practice, right? This takes practice. We're not natural at doing this. And so it takes practice of thinking, here's all the sort of steps I want to go through. There's a book called The 20-Minute Networking Meeting, and I can't remember who wrote it right off the top of my head. Somebody else probably knows about it. The 20-Minute Networking Meeting is a good book. It's a quick read. It's pretty easy and straightforward. And it kind of lays out some of these points that you want to hit on. So, if you're looking for more stuff to read, that's a good one to kind of check out. But yeah, I think it's totally natural for it to be like, I forgot that. Like, oh, I didn't do that. Right. And so as you do it more and more, you're going to practice and get better at it. All right. So let's see. And I appreciate your comment about that. So I'm glad that we came off of the mute. And I think that's a better improvement for this for next time, is just let people come off of mute. So some other suggestions. It looks like Libby was saying find an in-person Toastmaster group or something similar. So you can practice speaking. Yeah, I'm a big proponent. I did Toastmasters for a year. I'm not currently in a group, but did tons of Toastmasters, because it helps me not just it's about becoming a better speaker, but it's actually more about confidence, because you learn how to be a more confident communicator. So even if you're like, I'm never going to speak in public, I'm never going to go to a conference, I'm never going to try to get paid to do this, joining a Toastmasters group is a great way to develop your confidence speaking at work, in meetings, doing presentations, things like that. I think it's a very affordable professional development activity that most people don't take advantage of. And some companies will reimburse you for it, not everybody, but it's definitely a thing that's helpful if you're trying to get better at your presence and speaking at work. And you just get more confident, because in some of the meetings, if you've never been to a meeting, they do a thing called table topics, where they'll just pick somebody randomly who's not prepared, and they'll give them a topic, and you have to speak for a minute on it, or 2 minutes, and you just stand up in front of people and talk. And so you do that a few times, and then when you go to work and you get put on the spot for something, you feel it's not scary. You're like, oh, I can do this. I do this every week at my Toastmasters group. And so you talk about it. So this became a commercial for Toastmasters. I'm not part of Toastmasters anymore, but I do think it's a really it's a really strong thing you can do for your own professional development. It doesn't have to take a lot of time. I mean, but it's good even if you're never going to be a public speaker. So yeah, I would say the other things, and again, these are things like not specific to networking, but I do find that the Toastmasters helped me be more confident speaking, which helped me be more confident in networking. I also did my first improv class this year, about a few months ago, and I know not everybody's comfortable with that, so I get it if you're like, I'm not going to do improv. What was really amazing to me through those classes is improv is not about speaking or acting. It's about listening. Improv is about listening to what the other person's saying to you, and then really hearing it and figuring out how, what comes next. Right. So that ties in a lot with what I would say about networking. Is networking really should be more about listening instead of speaking. If you're listening to what other people are saying, you're going to be a much more effective networker. You don't have to have pitch. You don't have to have pitches. You don't have to have elevator pitches. You don't have to have any things. You just have to be a better listener. And when you're a better listener, you're going to be a better networker. All right. So Let's see. Patricia's got a question. Most of the job hunting advice stresses warming up old connections before asking them for help. To me, this feels inauthentic, contacting them out of the blue, having some back and forth, and then asking for help a week later. If one of my cold connections reached out and asked me for a job, I'd rather just say, let me know up front. Yeah, I mean, I think it can come across that way. So here's what I would say. What would make you feel more authentic if somebody you didn't know reached out to you and was like, "Hey, I'm looking for a job," right? I mean, we all know, but what's your alternative, right? Is kind of my response to that. I think where a lot of people get this feeling, because we've all been in this situation, right? So Patricia, I'm sure you've been in this situation where somebody was just like, "Hey, I haven't talked to you in years, and all of a sudden I'm reaching out to you. I've never talked to you for multiple years, and oh, I need a job. Can you help me?" So nobody likes the way that feels, and so we don't want to do that to other people. But what I would say is another way to kind of look at it. Well, number one, this is why you should always be networking, because when you don't need anything and you're not asking for anything, you can develop these relationships. That being said, I get a lot of people are looking for jobs right now. So if you are looking for a job, I think you have to be upfront and say, "Hey, I'm currently on a job search. I know we haven't talked in a while, but I really enjoyed working with you, or I know, I'd love to catch up. Um, and would love your advice," right? So you're not necessarily, I think it's when people go, "Get me a job," that's when it feels really sort of icky, right? But if somebody says like, "Hey, I'm going through this hard time right now, I know if the shoe were on the other foot, if the tables were turned, if it were you, I'd be happy to kind of give you some advice on this. But I'm really kind of looking for help," right? So that's maybe a little less sort of forward and maybe feels a little bit better. The other thing is, if you're reaching out and connecting, you're like, "Hey, I haven't talked in a long time, would love to reconnect." Um, and then the conversation that you're having is focused on the other person, right? Again, this is about listening, focusing on the other person, saying like, "What are you working on? What are you doing?" Like maybe you're not looking for a job, but what are you struggling with at work? What's challenging you? Or what projects are you working on? All those kind of things. If you're making it more about them and listening to what they're saying, and you have an opportunity to give them some advice, then a lot of the times that sort of awkwardness goes away, because they're like, "Oh, I came into this conversation feeling like this person was going to totally ask me for a job, and they made it all about me. And they actually helped me out. I got more out of this than I'm giving to them. I really got to try to like help them out." Now, you can say like that feels inauthentic because ultimately you're going to ask them for something. But that's how we interact as humans. I mean, that's how we've evolved. We're social people. We work in groups. We help each other out. So to think that you're going to go through life and nobody's ever going to help you, or you're not going to help other people, is kind of, I would say, not looking at how we as a species even evolved to this point, right? So we're always helping other people. They're helping us, and honestly, I feel good when I help other people, right? If I can help other people, I feel good about that. And then if they help me, if people help me first and I haven't helped them, I actually am kind of embarrassed about it. Like I don't like getting gifts. I'm a bad gift giver. I'm a bad gift receiver. I tend to feel like if I haven't done something for somebody else, I feel guilty, and I want to balance the karmic scales as fast as I can by helping somebody else out. Because people, it's the principle of reciprocity, right? So if somebody gives you something, you want to reciprocate and balance the scales, even if you're not thinking about it. You unconsciously want it balance in the universe. So I would just say yes. I think where you're saying it feels inauthentic and the warming up connections comes from the like reaching out and just saying, "Can you do something for me?" without first helping other people. So I'm a big believer in giving first and doing this with a giving mindset. And if you can, doing it when you don't need anything in return. So you do that over time and you've become a giver, you've helped people out, you've networked, you've generally had these connections of people. They're not your best friends. You're not going to hang out with them on the weekends. They're just people that you talk to and you come back to, frequently and talk to them. And then when something comes up and you're like, hey, I'm looking for this, this, and this, they're like, yeah, I'm happy to help Greg. Greg has helped me so many times in the past. Like, I can't wait to help Greg because I need to get the universe back in balance, right? And I'm not a big woo-woo universe person type of thing. I just believe that we as humans like to not feel like we owe people, right? So if they help us, we want to help them. So I don't know if that helps out Patricia or not, but it's a way that I've found that helps people get more comfortable with the idea of reaching out to people and going into it thinking, how am I going to help this person? Even though I need help, how am I going to help this person first? And once I've done that, I'm not going to feel so bad about asking them for help.
Thanks, Greg.
Yep. All right. Any other questions? I think we're coming up on the top of the hour here. So I appreciate you all for showing up. I appreciate your questions. I think I got to everybody's question. If I didn't, I apologize. I think I tried to get all of them. But yeah, appreciate you guys being on here. Thank you so much for all of this. And yeah, keep following. If you have questions, you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn. And if this is something, I probably will do this in the future at some point. I'll try to do it better next time with a more voice interaction than just the text. So thank you guys for joining. Have a great week. Let me know if you have any other questions, either on LinkedIn or through email, through my newsletter. And yeah, great. Hopefully that helped. I hope you learned something. Go out, find some interesting people. And I always say ABC, always be connecting. So go out, have a great week. Thank you all.